Now we're going to talk about our newer V-box spreaders for a little bit. The big difference is, unlike the spreader that we showed you a while ago that mounts on the back of the truck, this V-box spreader actually slides into the truck, and then in a minute we're going to show you how that goes in and out of the truck. But first of all, we're going to kind of walk around and show you some things to look for when you do your pre-trip, and parts, the different parts, and what needs to be greased and looked at each and every time you use it. On the V-box spreader, you have two front bearings, and they're located right here, and this is what helps turn the chain, so to speak, in the bottom of the spreader, which pulls your salt to the back. And there's one on each side, and they've actually designed these where you can actually grease them from the rear with a hose that goes all the way to the back. There's one on this side, and there's also one on the other side. And you can see this one is grease, excess grease coming out of it, so you know you got it in there. You also see here is your slack adjusters. You have one on each side of the bearing, as I mentioned, and it consists of this threaded rod and the spring to maintain the tension. It's been found that spring really doesn't adequately maintain the tension like it ought to, and this is constantly turning and vibrating. So they've added the jam nuts on either side. You would set your adjustment the proper, which I'm going to talk about that in just a second, and then they've added the second nut just to jam it, make it tight. And how you would loosen these and turn it so that it forces your bearing forward. And you ask the question, well, how do you know you have both of them? It's simple enough as a tape measure. Measure one side, and then go over and tighten it up to measure the second side. And then when you get it where you want it, lock your jam nuts down and you should be ready to go. Here's the chain. Here's what drives the spreader. It turns in a fashion such as this, pulling the salt back towards the back, as I said. And you need to keep this well lubed and greased every time you go out and use it. This really shouldn't look this way, but for demonstration purposes we're using it. And this is the part that I was showing you that needs to be adjusted, and as you adjust it, it's going to take the tension out of your chain. And you ask yourself, how do I know how much slack to leave in the chain? Well, if you look underneath here, you can see where the bottom of the chain goes back. And if you got about 16 to 20 inches before your chain is touching this part, that's a good tension on the chain. So as you're doing your pre-trip and getting ready to go out, before you load it, make sure your chain is properly tensioned and lubed. As you're getting ready to load up, you need to do your pre-trip inspection, and so there's some things you want to check. We talked about the tensioner and greasing your bearings. You want to check your bolts that are holding your spreader to the frame. As you walk back, you want to check the condition of your pins, the grease of the rod. These legs fold up as you load it, and so they need to be greased. Here again, checking the condition of your pins, the straps that hold your pre-wet tanks on. And you want to check for any signs of leakage of your hoses and your valves. When you're dealing with salt, it's pretty obvious. If you've got residue coming out or you've got a puddle, you can see. You want to check the conditions of all your fittings, and these are your fittings for your pre-wet conditions, and you see this one needs to be replaced. And these are different sizes and color coded to match the fittings on the truck, so there's no getting them backwards. They'll only fit on one or the other. But this controls your pre-wet, which would be your salt brine or your calcium chloride that would be sprayed onto the salt as it coming out of your spreader. You also want to check the condition of your hoses. These hoses here on this side control your spinner, and here again they only go on one way, but you want to make sure there's no obvious signs of leaks on them or wear or puddles on the ground. And now we've kind of made our way to the back of the spreader, and we see our spreader here, and we'll talk about that now.